Reclaim your time. Welcome to AI Advocates. I'm Lisa Dieker.
And I'm Maggie Mosher.
And we're excited today to launch a new series. We're going to call it the 10 Bytes of Innovation in AI, Maggie. What are your thoughts?
I'm excited about it. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is give you, as teachers, something to think about each of the first weeks of the school year. And so we're going to start with week 1, which we are calling the lesson launch, AI as your digital lesson planner. So Maggie, what are your thoughts? You're a new teacher, you're a veteran teacher, and AI's in your world, and it's week 1, and you got lesson plans to write. What are you thinking?
I think it depends on where I want to go. I love Magic School for certain lesson plan pieces. It's free. But what I like about Magic School is it'll let me put the grade level and it'll let me put specific standards. So the standards are already listed there. So that and Brisk AI, all of those standards are already in the input. So I kind of like being able to stick those standards in immediately and then state what my students like in the chat portion. Like my students are really interested in Minecraft. They're really interested in Harry Potter. So I like that about those pieces. I also like when I put it in, I can state exactly what I want my outcomes to be. So I want them to create a video at the end. I want them to, I want this to be a 15-minute lesson. I want it to have 5 minutes. I want a hook at the beginning. It really does a great job of making sure all those pieces are incorporated. Whereas if I just put it in ChatGPT or if I put it in Gemini, it will give me a basic lesson, but it won't think about all the pieces that I might want and how long it'll take as an educator.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really like to think about with any lesson plan, whether it's AI generated or Lisa Dieker generated, is I always like to start when I'm lesson planning. Let's say you and I were even co-teaching, and that's a lot of the work that I do, is what's the outcome or the output you want students to be able to do at the end? And I think too many times, no offense to our elementary friends, but we tend to say, oh, there's a worksheet they'll finish, or in math, there's some problems we'll do. Well, that's what else I like about AI is you could say, look, my output today for my lesson plan is that I want all students to be able to write a sentence with a noun and a verb, or I want all students to be able to name the stages of mitosis. Those are great concepts maybe for week 1, but now put it in AI, something like Diffit or Magic School AI, and say, can you tell me 4 different ways students could show what they know? And then that backward planning design is if you want me to show what I know through a picture or an oral assessment or whatever, now I can go and write my lesson plan based on that output. And I often take a state standard and to say week 1, they're supposed to read the first chapter of Where the Red Fern Grows, or they're reading, a story about a cat that gets lost in their reading series. I often put that in and say, can you give me an output of what students should be able to do at the end of this lesson? So if you start with that in mind, I think it makes it easier to be that special educator, whether it's being gifted or enrichment or remediation. But it also, I think it's something that AI does really well. It gives you multiple pathways. And so I don't think it matters the tool. I think as your lesson planning, start with the output and then make the plan around that. But I like your idea of kind of doing something different. Some other quick thoughts.
Yeah, I think also if you aren't sure what to do with grouping, there are specific chatbots for that. So if I want my lesson to have certain groups, like I want to get my students talking about this together and prompts for within those groups or specific roles for each group, it will do that. If I also even know at the end of this lesson, like you had said, I want some people to be able to do a video, some people to be able to write an essay, some people to be able to come up and do a poem or play. It'll create that choice board for me where the students will have a picture of it and state below it what that is, so that even my nonverbal or specifically if I want non-readers to have options, they can just click the one that looks like they want to present in that way. And then there's always that freebie where if you come up with a good option, you can present it to me. But I think it gives a lot of choice that way, like you had said, multiple ways to show it, but visually. So I don't have to write these choice boards anymore. They're just created. And like you had said, there's even a chatbot for Universal Design for Learning. Like there's even a chatbot to help take my lesson. If I already have a lesson, but I really don't think it works, I can throw it in and have it modify that lesson and make it better. I can ask it questions about my lesson. Like last year I presented this and I felt like students were bored, or I felt like they didn't understand why this was relevant. Make it relevant to them. Here's where we live. Here's the jobs they're going to be having. I think all of those pieces really help.
And then I'm going to share a tip I know we learned from our friend and our dean, Rick Ginsburg, who that ELI prompt, which is explain it like I'm, which is one of my new favorite prompts. So thank you for sharing that with us, Rick. But I think that's also something, if there's something in your lesson, like I know this stage of mitosis is really hard, or the students want to understand why the cat was lost, and you're teaching fourth graders, you can say, explain it ELI like 5, and you just say ELI 5, and it'll take that concept. I love it for vocabulary. So as you're doing your lesson plans, it's not just about getting the lesson plan structure like you did in college during student teaching, but it's really having that diversity to your lesson plans. And Maggie, I know you're really big into safety and security. So to kind of wrap up this short one on lesson plans, can you talk about maybe some things that we're doing our lesson plans we should think about for safety and security?
Yeah, I think you have to think if you're using a free chatbot, any kind of free chatbot, ChatGPT, Copilot, anything that's free, that is going to train the chatbot. That's why it's free. So it's going to OpenAI, it's going to the source makers. So that information is no longer yours. So if I were to put it in and ask if I'm plagiarizing, I'd be plagiarizing myself essentially because it's up in the cloud. It's available for anyone. As opposed to if you're using a chatbot that is specifically FERPA compliant or within your computer, doesn't leave your server, or if it does leave your server.
And I think Google Education on Migo would be your go-tos there. Is that a safe statement?
My favorite one is Gemini right now, Gemini Pro, because it's part of the Google Classroom and the Google Education suites. So it doesn't leave my desktop computer, the school server, which I really like. And anything that does that they need just for their data is encrypted the entire time, which is nice. So it's just as safe as using Google Classroom, but it's got AI in it. And it's specifically that AI is right there in the document. So if I'm in Google Docs, my AI is right there. I can say, here's a document, here's a student. What I love about my lesson plans now is I can say, here's the student that did this last year, and this was my exemplar. Write a rubric based on this exemplar. Make it a really good rubric that talks about what I want and what I don't want. And then I can use that same information to help grade those lessons later.
Great. So again, what's our theme here, Maggie? What are we trying to do with all of this?
To give teachers back their time. Know you're busy, and we know lesson planning can be a lot of work when you start from scratch. And now we don't have to start from scratch.
Thanks for joining us.